Antipater of Sidon, and Philo of Byzantium. For the most part, they agree upon the 7 wonders of the ancient world, what they are, these 5 sources. So most of them agree, and I'll get this out of the way so you know where we're going. Most of them agree that it is the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. So they seem to agree on those as being the 7. Of course, we hear about the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and we immediately think of the word wonders. And so from that, we figure that means something that is astonishing, right? It's amazing. Marvels to behold, grandiose in description. I mean, certainly when we see the Pyramid of Giza today, it brings about that sense of awe as an awesome. Of course, if we're in the middle of the 19th century, we would say awful, which sounds like it's bad, but it's full of awe. Anyway, so it was amazing, wonderful. But here's the interesting part, is that that's not really the word. What? Wonder is not the right word. Somebody made a mistake. So here we go. This is the part where I'm going to start ruining everything for you guys. The original Greek word is it's actually a theamata. Theamata means things to be seen. Theamata means things to be seen. So, in other words, these are the 7 to be seen sights of the world. Now, the 7 to be seen sights of the world, it doesn't sound that captivating. It's like 7 must-see sights. But you got to realize this is tourism. They're trying to bring you in. These are must-see. We got to collect them all. We got to visit all 7 of them, and so that's why it's must-see. So where do we get the word wonders? Somebody made a spelling error. So theamata is Theamata. Theamata. Well, somebody messed up and they got confused and they spelled it Theumata, which of course really does mean wonder. So the 4th letter, alpha, becomes an upsilon, and now suddenly it's the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So I'm sorry, I kind of ruined it there, but yeah, it's must-see sights of the ancient world, not the. So why 7? Why would they use 7 at all? Well, 7 is a lucky number in antiquity. It could not be mathematically divided, nor could it be a product of the first 10 numbers or factored for that matter. So this made this number above approach and maybe above reproach, right? Untouched. In fact, they called the number 7, they called it a virgin, no less. Always pure. And so since the virginal 7 was always pure and strong, they connected with the goddess Athena and sometimes the goddess Artemis. So the significance, however, is that the number 7 is magical. So what we lost in the wonderment of the title to just, these wonderful sights, we've gained by the number 7, meaning that it's still kind of magical. It's special. And of course, then again, 7 can be used for good And 7 could be used for evil. So it can work either way. I mean, yes, you got obviously the 7 seas, and the 7 sages of ancient Greece. But you also have the 7 deadly sins, right? so 7 can go either way, but it still is something that is solid. It's beyond reproach, or just it's something to be remembered, and so that's why we have 7. Now, who started the idea? Herodotus, actually, the father of history. He planted the seed for what would eventually be the seven wonders of the ancient world. He impressed his readers upon the exotic sights that were now being encountered by the Greeks. Following the Persian War, a whole new world appeared. And many Greeks were curious to see what is beyond their lands. What is in Babylon, for example? What is in ancient Egypt? And so curiosity came about. In the 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great, he defeated the Persian Empire. And now both Babylonia, right, which is, of course, today Mesopotamia, right? Or, sorry, I should say Iraq. Hopefully not Mesopotamia. It still is the land between 2 rivers, so I guess that does work. As well as Egypt came underneath the sphere of influence of the Greeks. And so you have, this is, of course, now the Hellenistic world. Hellas obviously means Greece, and so Hellenistic is realms that are held by the Greeks. Okay, and so what will happen now is that, so there's tourism going on here. So yes, we want to visit the pyramids. We want to visit the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. We have wonders too, thought the Greeks. We have places that are special. They do add, obviously the Carian Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. But and it was formed by Greeks because there's 5 artists that worked on it. And so they started to say, you know what, why don't we also stress Greek sites? And so the Temple of Artemis and the Statue of Zeus and the Colossus of Rhodes were added because, you know what, my golly, Greeks are amazing too. so now we're kind of being more inclusive of everything. Okay. So now we have, as I mentioned before, the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And of course, we know them all by now, right? Okay, so they are what? Does anybody want to say one just real quick? Just shout one out.
Pyramids of Giza.
Okay, so you have the Pyramid of Giza. Good. What's another one?
Hanging Gardens.
Hanging Gardens. Anybody else want to shout one?
Colossus of Rhodes.
Huh?
Colossus of Rhodes.
Colossus of Rhodes. Okay. What else? Yeah, you guys taking notes?
Temple of Artemis.
Temple of Artemis. Yeah, that's 4. Okay. So next one. Another one.
Lighthouse of Alexandria.
Lighthouse of Alexandria. Good. Okay. Got 2 more. How we're doing? Okay. A clue.
Oh, Zeus. Something to do with Zeus.
Zeus. That's right. Okay. It's like, what, fat? It's like, no, Zeus. Okay. All right. What else? Any other ones? All right. We're missing one. We have one more. See how memorable they are? Okay. Now, we mentioned Hanging Gardens, did we not?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So, I'm going to do the last one.
The Colosseum?
Close. Colossus of Rhodes. Right. Yeah. So there we have it. And you're going, okay, so that was it. Well, the reality is the list wasn't completely agreed upon. There were some variants that happened. And some of the earlier lists mentioned, instead of the Hanging Gardens, they'll mention the walls of Babylon as being pretty amazing. So that was an alternative one. So, for example, we have here the walls of Babylon here. They were considered a marvel here. Herodotus does mention this. He says that Babylon lies in the Great Plain, and in its size, it is such that each face measures 22 kilometers, the shape of the whole being a square. Thus, the circumference is 90 kilometers. Such is the size of the city of Babylon, and it has magnificence greater than all other cities of which we have knowledge. First, there runs around it a deep and broad trench full of water, then a wall 50 meters in thickness and hundreds of meters in height. At the top of the wall, along the edges, they built chambers of 1 story facing one another, and between the rows of chambers, they left space to drive a 4-horse chariot. In the circuit of the wall, there are set 100 gates made out of bronze. And so the walls of Babylon was considered a wonder, and then it was dropped from the list. Then you're thinking, okay, so we get the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Well, no, because then they thought, we're going to put the obelisk of Babylon. What? That was all stuff you don't know. Yeah, the great, you guys know the great obelisk of Babylon, right? No? No, I guess not. Okay, yeah, that was on the list. Diodorus of Sicily discussed the legendary obelisk of Babylon. According to this, it talks about Queen Semiramis, that she quarried out of a stone for the mountain of Armenia, which was 40 meters long and 7 meters wide and thick. And this she hauled by means of many multitudes of yokes of mules and oxen to the river, and there loaded it on a raft, on which she brought it down the stream to Babylon. She then set it up besides the most famous street, an astonishing sight to all who passed by. And this stone is called by some an obelisk from its shape, and they number it among the 7 wonders of the world. Okay, so you're thinking, well, okay, well, I don't remember that one. Well, guess what? Now it's time for the Hanging Gardens of Babylon to take over, right? No. They had another alternative. Still trying to make up their mind here. So this will be the Palace of Cyrus at Ecbatana, which, by the way, nobody has found a shred of. Nothing exists of it. Finally, we get the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And so, but you know, I have found also on a list, strangely enough, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the walls of Babylon, and they had dropped the lighthouse off the list. So, you know, like I said, we do have 5 different works that talk about the 7 wonders of the ancient world, plus references in other areas. It's pretty fun going through all this material and discovering so much of it unexpectedly. So, but there we have it. Okay, so as far as dating when these 7 wonders were kind of put together, let's go through this. Okay, so the Colossus of Rhodes was built between 292 to 280 BCE, while the lighthouse was built during the reign of Ptolemy, which spanned from 284 to 246. And so most likely this list came about probably around the 240s. Yeah, so, or a little bit after that. Okay, the earliest surviving list, however, comes from Antipater of Sidon, dating from 140 BCE. And he says as follows, quote, I gazed on the walls of impregnable Babylon, along which chariots may race. There's the walls again. And on the Zeus by the banks of the Alpheus. I have seen the Hanging Gardens and the Colossus of Helios, the great man-made mountains and the lofty pyramids, and the giant tomb of Mausoleum. But when I saw the sacred house of Artemis that towers to the clouds, the others were placed in the shade. for the sun himself has never looked upon its equal outside Olympus. So from the perspective of Antipater, the best of all, obviously, is the Temple of Artemis. Notice that the Lighthouse of Alexandria is not on that list, right? So it's still being constructed, and that's why I did it around that time. Okay, so let's get started on talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza. Why not? I mean, this is the one that still stands. We can still see it. We're still awed by it. I kind of actually think that it's a pyramid scheme, but that's just me. So what will happen is, sorry, these jokes, I got to watch out. Philo of Byzantium writes as follows about the Great Pyramid of Giza. He says, whilst it is impossible to build the pyramids in Memphis today, it is marvelous to describe them. Mountains have been built on mountains. The sheer size of the squared masonry is difficult for the mind to grasp, and everyone is mystified at the enormous strength that was required to prize up such a weight of material. The ascent is no less long or tiring than a road journey. Standing on the top and looking down, one could only dimly see the bottom. The whole polished work is joined together so seamlessly that it seems to be made out of a continuous rock. To one's admiration and respect, and to its lavish splendor, it is through deeds such as these that men go up to the gods, or that gods come down to men. Wow, this is a great description of the pyramids. And you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, you know, it's so seamless. Last I checked, the Pyramid of Giza is not really seamless. It's lots of steps. You know, how in the world, right? Well, the reality is that those steps were not there. It was covered by smooth limestone before it was removed. We'll talk about when it was removed a little bit, but it was nice and smooth, which, by the way, makes the fact that he climbed it all the more awe-inspiring. Can you imagine trying to climb something as smooth and polished? So I got to give Philo some credit there. It's a pretty brave thing. I'll try to climb up the slide to the very top. Can you imagine that? Okay, it was built by the Pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops, from 2589 to 2566 BCE. It is 146.5 meters high, or 481 feet, and it was the tallest structure in the entire world for 3,800 years. That is until the completion of the Lincoln Cathedral in England around 1300. So it was the tallest structure in the world up until then. It does deserve to be called a wonder. The Great Pyramid was not built by aliens. I'm looking for my tinfoil hat, but I can't find it right now. Not built by aliens. It was not monuments for a spaceship to land. No, I kind of have to ruin things for you. But it was built in only 20 years. Got your attention? 20 years. Using a round-the-clock labor force, night crew and day crew. Of course, it's estimated that the weight, since there's about 2.3 million blocks, 12 blocks weighing between 25 to 80 tons would have to be placed into the structure every hour, day and night for 20 years. I'll say that again. In order to accomplish this, you have 2.3 million blocks, 12 blocks weighing between 25 to 80 tons would have to be placed into the structure every hour, day and night for 20 years. That's a lot of work to do. It was not built by slave labor. This is the Old Kingdom. They hardly had slaves. And those slaves that were brought in by foreigners. By the way, the Middle Kingdom didn't have instituted slavery either, although people felt like slaves at times. The New Kingdom did have slavery. It was brought in by those known as the Hyksos. And so, yes, New Kingdom, you have slavery. Old Kingdom, you don't. I think it's kind of connected to the fact that, in Egypt, living is easy. The Nile River, it comes in and takes care of things in an agricultural sense, but a lot of people have too much time on their hands. You got to keep them busy. And so during those other times, it kept them busy building stuff. They were contracted labor. So just want to mention that. In fact, we have, guess what? Records of this, which I think is kind of fun there. Skilled workers, 10,000 of them. Their camps have been discovered at the base of the pyramids by the archaeologists. The breakdown of this labor was hierarchical, consisting of two gangs of 100,000 men. Each of these gangs were divided into 5 zaz, or phyli, of 20,000 men each, and then subdivided from there. So that's how they did it. And, you got to pay them. Yeah, so we have lists of how they pay them. I kind of think it's kind of funny. I found one list. They fed them, what was it? Onions, garlic, and beer. I found on one list. I'm just thinking, hi, honey, I'm home. I've been working on the pyramid. Like, oh, can you imagine? Oh, okay. But you got pyramid breath, Of course, the interesting part about this is that they also gave them meat, the best meat possible. And we have found remnants of this best meat in the various pits by the labor camps. We have even found a journal that part of it survived, that was written as part of creating this particular pyramid. We have the guy's name. He writes down details and talks about shipping the stone up the Nile. Did you guys know this? Guess we're all in denial now, right? Okay, so there you have it. So pyramids, pretty interesting. Obviously inside you have the grand gallery, the king's chamber, and the queen's chamber. The entire pyramid was covered by smooth, white limestone blocks. Smooth. And you're thinking, how long did that stand there? All the way to the 1300s. Isn't that sad? It almost came down to us in a beautiful form. But then there was an earthquake and it loosened the stones. These stones were then removed over a period of time, starting with Nasr al-Din of Hassan in 1356 to build various buildings in Cairo, including various mosques. So if you want to see this beautiful white limestone, you can go to Cairo and some of these buildings still stand to this day. And it's worth looking at because of the beautiful fine polish that used to be for this pyramid. Now, obviously, Great Pyramids did not arise out of nowhere. And I'm going to tell you a brief story just about where the pyramids came from, and it's going to ruin them for you. Is that okay? Can I ruin pyramids for you? You guys ready? All right. First of all, nobody called them pyramids. that's pyramidas. No. In the ancient Egyptian, they called them mers. So when people are saying, I just can't find any evidence for pyramids, you're using the wrong words. Myrrh, and of course it's connected to the idea of ascension. So it is a place of ascension, which kind of gives you a hint of what pyramids are all about, places of ascension. But that's not how it started. I'm gonna give you the boring story, but I'll make sure that the boring story is as short as possible. What will happen? Myrrh is spelled M-I-R. Well, it's not really spelled. I'm using phonetics because these are obviously Egyptian hieroglyphics, but it's a mer. Although I do get the connection with the mer concept. So M-I-R, mer. So what will happen is that you have the pharaohs made something called a mastaba. It's kind of like a raised, kind of a brick rise above the ground, and you have two chambers, usually one for the burial and the other one for his stuff. And so one pharaoh decided to make his mastaba bigger, and the next one decided to make his mastaba bigger. And so there's kind of a competition of whose mastaba is bigger. This sounds kind of Freudian, but we'll just stop there. So the mastabas, somebody had this great idea. His name is Imhotep, and he's working for King Dozer. And he said, you know how I'm going to get the best pyramid, the best tomb possible is I'm just going to stack the mastabas up. So he stacked 5 mastabas, each one getting smaller than the other, to make a pyramid. And you have the first step pyramid, and it's simply 5 mastabas on top of each other. That's all it is. And of course, a lot of it is about ego, and it is 62 meters or 203 feet high, built during the Old Kingdom. Well, there's a few pharaohs in between. And here comes a guy by the name of Huni, Pharaoh Huni. And Pharaoh Huni, what he does is that he decides that he's going to try to make it higher. So instead of making full-size mastabas, he'll make a whole bunch of little ones, real small little ones to get higher up. Well, Huni, I'm sorry, he didn't make it very well, and it started to crumble, started to fall apart. And so the next pharaoh, his name is Sneferu. I just want to pause there. I try to picture what a pharaoh by the name of Sneferu looks like. I picture this big, huge nose. I'm Sneferu. Anyway, Sneferu, little pyramidal. So Sneferu, what he does is that he realizes it's crumbling. So he puts limestone to buttress this crumbling pyramid. So remember I told you the steps were too small, it's starting to crumble, and so he slaps on these limestone blocks to keep it from falling down as a brace, and he looked back and says, hey, that's a pyramid. That's a true pyramid. What? Nothing of genius? It's a building code violation. That's where we get I know, I'm telling you, I'm ruining things here. So it doesn't even work out because Sneferu's limestone starts to slip down, and you can still see the ruins to this day. They are still there, sadly enough. If you want to see it, it's known, as the medium pyramid, MEIDUM. So you can still see it, and you can see it still kind of slipped up. So he decides that he's going to try again. Same pharaoh, Sneferu, the same guy, So because he didn't work out with Huni's pyramid, but I'm going to try my own. And so he creates what will become known as the bent pyramid. The bent pyramid, this is really sad too. It starts from the desert. It rises at a 54-degree inclination, 54 inclination. And then he realizes that it's not going to survive that way. And he changes his mind at the very end and turns it to the 43-degree angle. So he's like, this is too steep. This is going to collapse. And it's called the bent pyramid because it will bend. It's like this. So guess what? That same pharaoh starts for the 3rd time. People are always going, wow, we're so amazed at the pyramids. How long did it take them? Well, this one pharaoh is going through his 3rd try. So they're getting this down, trial and error. And this one is called the Red Pyramid. The Red Pyramid by Sneferu, it still stands to this day. And he figured out, well, we're not going to do 54-degree inclination. we're going to do the 43 that we had at the very end. He made the entire thing a 43-degree angle, and guess what? It still stands this day, and it is the most perfectly preserved pyramid. Still there. It's amazing. It is 105 meters, it's 344 feet high today. It's just a little shorter than the Great One of Giza, and it has the covering on it. We need to have more tourists go there. You know, imagine what it looked like. Okay, so what does a pyramid represent? Well, it does represent ego quite a bit, but it does also represent the tenacity of humanity to keep trying through trial and error to master the pyramid. You got to give them that. But later on, of course, they'll wink and say, hey, it represents, you know, the ray of Ra. The rays of Ra coming down there, because, you know, it's not a building code violation at all. It's you know, it represents the rays, and they go with it. And so that becomes a lovely story. You can also merge, because they are places of ascension, can be understood as resurrection machines, in a sense. I don't want to say it quite that way, because that sounds woo. But the idea is that it does represent the power of Pharaoh and his power over immortality, because he is, after all, a god king. So there you have it. There's other stories I can tell, but then the whole talk will be on pyramids, and I don't think I want to do that. Is that, you guys got it? So I don't have to talk about what happened to the pyramids, because guess what? They're still there. So let's move on to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Okay, so the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, writing around 290 BCE, there was a certain Berosus, as recorded by Josephus, who directly credits Nebuchadnezzar II with the construction of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And he adds, in this palace, he erected very high walks, supported by stone pillars, and by planting what was called a pensile paradise and replacing it with all sorts of trees, he rendered the prospect an exact resemblance of a mountainous country. This he did to gratify his queen, because she had been brought up in Media and was fond of a mountainous situation. This is in Josephus against Apium. Well, this is a good source because, you know, I mean, first of all, Berosus is actually from Babylon. He spent part of his life there before going on to Egypt. So this would be, in a sense, a primary source. So he was there to see it. And that's a good description. The problem is Nebuchadnezzar never mentions the fact that he made a hanging garden. So it could be Josephus going, hey, you know what? One Mesopotamian king sounds like the other. We don't like Nebuchadnezzar. We'll just put his name there. That's a possibility. The other possibility is that the inscriptions got lost. But we do know that making gardens, especially ones that seem to hang, was not unique. You have Tiglath-Pileser the first, 1115 to 1077 BCE, who made vast gardens of Nineveh that had a quality of seeming to hang. You have Nersanopol II, 883 to 859, who also planted extensive gardens. In fact, in his own inscription, I'm reading him now, canal water came flowing down from above through the gardens. The paths are full of scent. The waterfalls sparkle like the stars of heaven in the garden of pleasure. The pomegranate tree, which are clothed in clusters of fruit like vines, enrich the breezes in the garden of delight. I, assure the Sartopol, gather fruits continuously in the garden of joys like a squirrel. Okay, all right. He had me until squirrel. It was really beautiful, and you know, I just picture this. But whatever. The point of the matter is, it is hanging. You know, it is a garden. Waters are coming down. It's beautiful. And so we go on. Diodorus Siculus also writes about these hanging gardens, and his description is pretty close to it. I'm actually reading his description. He says the Persian, wanted to resemble the mountains, the meadows of her mountains, asked the king to imitate through the artifice of a planted garden, the distinctive landscape of Persia. The park extended 4 plethora on each side, and since the approach to the garden sloped like a hillside, and several parts of the structure rose from one pier to another, the appearance of the whole resembled that of a theater. While the ascending terraces have been built, there have been constructed beneath them galleries which carry the entire weight of the planted garden and rose little by little, one above the other along the approach, and the uppermost gallery, which was 50 cubits high, bore the highest surface of the park, which was made level with the circuit wall of the battlements of the city, and it goes on and on. So basically, this is what it looked like. You just picture a theater, and the gardens are in tiers all the way down, but in a circular sense. You guys got it? So circular tier, going down and buttressed against the high walls of Babylon. But in the vaults below it, have vast galleries and beautiful places. So they're not necessarily hanging by anything, right? But they do seem to be suspended in the air, and they would have been absolutely beautiful at one time. Of course, you can see, I also have other sources, which I will not read to you about them. You have, but we can go through this. Curtius Rufus talks about it. Strabo, he talks about it and mentions it as a 7 wonder. And others as well. Philo, of course, of Byzantium, he talks about it. But basically, there you have it. At this point, nothing remains of the hanging gardens. We haven't found anything. Some people are becoming so desperate, they think, well, Babylon, that could mean gate of the gods, and perhaps the site is the gate of the gods, Babylon, in Nineveh instead. And we do have evidence that there were hanging gardens in Nineveh, and I think I just mentioned one to you, under the squirrel. So maybe it's possible that that's where it is. But at this point, this is another lost wonder. Now we get to the Temple of Ephesus, and I don't know what to do with this one because this is way too long. So, okay. I would just say this. The Temple of Artemis was considered one of the favorites. And of course, I will just go ahead and ring this again. You'll have, obviously, Antipater Sidon says this: I have gazed, as I said, on the walls of impregnable Babylon, along which chariots may race, and on the Zeus by the banks of the Alpheus, right? And I have seen the hanging gardens and the Colossus of Helios, and the great man-made mountains of the lofty pyramids, and the gigantic tomb of Mausoleum. But when I saw the sacred house of Artemis that towers to the clouds, the others were placed in the shade, for the sun himself has never looked upon its equal outside of Olympus. To get the estimated size in your mind of how big the Temple of Artemis is, I want you first in your mind to picture, you guys, right? I want you to picture the Parthenon of Athens. You guys got the image of the Parthenon of Athens in your mind? Now triple the size. That's big. It's 3 times larger than the Parthenon. This is huge. It was the first version of it was built between 560 to 550 BCE by the Lydian king Croesus. It was a monolithic temple. It measured 115 by 55 meters. It faced west instead of east, betraying its Anatolian roots. It had 127 slender fluted ionic columns that were 19 meters high and were crowned by brightly painted volute capitals decorated with rosettes that were painted a nice bright red. It was a flashy temple. You gotta paint the Astropolis red, after all. It keeps it protected. So this was what he did, Croesus, is there used to be two temples, one dedicated to Artemis, the virgin goddess of the moon and hunt. The other temple was dedicated to Cybele, the great mother goddess. Anton Bammer, who I had a chance to sit down with, Anton Bammer is kind of like the Albert Einstein genius and famous when it comes to, looks like Albert Einstein, by the way, famous for his connection to the Temple of Artemis. He is the one who excavated the altars. He is the one who found the earliest image of Artemis. It's a wooden image. It crumbled, but we have all the decorations. He spent up to 40 years working at the site. And one time we had a chance to sit together, and he went over my preliminary dissertation, and we went through it together. So that was really cool. Because I can't get this information wrong because he's there going through with me. And I do have pictures, if you're interested, of me and him working together on it. But Anton Bammer mentioned the fact that they discovered these two sites. And if you take a look, you'll see that they're there. And what happened is Croesus tore down both those sites and built one temple on top. Well, actually, one temple on part of one of them. The other kind of was in the foreground, and the forefront. And so what happened is, here you go, a temple dedicated to the virgin goddess of the Greeks, and you got a temple dedicated to the great mother of Anatolia. When you made it into one temple, it became dedicated to a great virgin goddess, a great virgin mother goddess. You guys getting this? So we see this already in inscriptions by the time we get to the 4th century. Is this fascinating? So this concept comes about. You can see it's very interesting because Ephesus was the place where they declared Mary Mother of God at the Third Ecumenical Council of 431. Interesting. Just kind of throwing that one out for free. There's already have been a precedent there for a virgin mother going all the way back to this time. These ideas are being cemented together. That's amazing in and of itself. But this temple was burned down. Okay, and they built another one. The reality is, Herophilus is the one who burned it. You're not supposed to say his name, but, because he got the rap. I gotta tell you a secret. Anton Bammer told me this one. He didn't really burn it down. What happened is that it was actually sinking into the ground because it was unstable, and there was already cracks developing, and so the priests destroyed their own. Shh, and and he got the rap, so they could rebuild it in a better way. Yeah, we actually have inscriptions talking about the continual repairs of this temple towards the end, and so they took it down, they burned it in a remarkable fashion. Somehow, all the amazing stuff inside was saved. That's the first big clue. They're moving everything else to wink, to knock down this thing. So they rebuild the temple of Artemis, and it is just as wonderful as before. 117 ionic columns again, and so forth and so on. You had great sculptures and so forth there. You had in front of it a giant U-shaped altar that dominated the courtyard. It was 39 by 20 meters. It's a big altar area. They had stalls for 20 oxen. So they had 20 oxen they could kill. They had a whole series of taking care of that. In fact, part of this altar complex, there was one part of the altar that had a statue of Artemis on it. And what it did is that the long and the short of it is, this U-shaped altar, is that it faced the altar faced the how do I say this? The Epiphany window. And what's interesting is that in the Epiphany window, you have which is in the pediment of the temple, you have an image of Artemis that was golden. So what happened is that when the sun would set in the west, the light would hit directly the image of Artemis in the Epiphany window, and then the light had figured out would splay straight down like a ray right down onto the altar area where the other Temple of Artemis was located. Isn't that cool? So they had it all planned out. Yeah, okay. So playing with light, of course, everybody at that moment would go, oh. There is another Epiphany window on the opposite side as well, because, you know, why not double up the effects? It was, again, we know exactly how they did the processions. And, of course, I could tell you exactly that, but then we would be here forever. So you could ask me afterwards about that, but we don't have time. So anyway, amazing place. We move on to the statue of Zeus at Olympia. Oh, I should tell you what happened to Temple of Artemis. Sorry. Be bad. Okay, so what happened is that beautiful temple doing pretty well. And then between 249 to 251, everything goes wrong in Ephesus. You know how 2020 is with us? Yeah, that's 249 to 251 for the Ephesians. We're talking fires, we're talking plagues, and we're talking barbarians coming down and attacking. That's not enough. I mean, this is just a horrible period of time. So, I mean, the Ephesians will probably look at us today and say, hey, I got you. I know how you're doing. So what happened is the Temple of Artemis burned, and so they had to reconstruct part of it, but not to its full extent. Especially they rebuilt it during the time of Diocletian, and so a lot of it was the inner temenos was roofed over, and that became the temple, and then surrounding it were the broken columns or the colonnade of the original temple. Does that make sense? And everything else was, destroyed. Well, that kind of went on for a little while. Then what happened is that they started to demolish it during the later part of the 300s, especially after the year 381. They're starting to take down bits and pieces of it. It gets worse by the time of John Chrysostom is there. It is definitely in ruins, and they're talking about pagans still worshiping in these ruins. Many of the images of Artemis were politely buried as opposed to destroyed. We got two famous images that were taken good care of, so they felt bad, the new era is coming about. And so they bury what's called the Great Artemis and the Great Beautiful Artemis, and as you know, they're unscratched, great condition, so they gave them a proper burial. Well, then I'm going to share some information that nobody knows again. Here he goes. So Antipater and his wife shared that they built a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary inside the Temple of Artemis. How's that? They gave me the article. I never published it. But anyway, the point of the matter is, there it is. They publish bits and pieces in other journals, so yay, it's still out there. But the point of the matter is, hey, the legacy goes directly to Mother Mary when it comes to the site. Okay, but today you go there and it's all they have is a reconstructed pillar. It's not even the full site, it's full size as it was. And oftentimes there's a stork's nest on top, and oftentimes with a stork in there, and everything else is real marshy. So this great site of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, or 7 must-see list of the ancient world, it's kind of marshy. I love going there in May because all the turtles like to swim around the ponds throughout the temple site. But if you're not into turtles, it's hard to figure out what's going on. Even the turtles seem a little bit lost. Moving right along. So we have the statue of Zeus at Olympus. Now, of course, on Olympia, you have the Olympic Games. You guys having fun yet? So 776 BCE at the start of the Olympic Games. These are, of course, dedicated to Zeus. And so the Temple of Zeus is obviously built. It's not as big as the Temple of Artemis, but it's a nice size. But this temple needed an image of Zeus inside, since especially all the Greeks are arriving from near and far to Olympia to visit every 4 years. And so, in fact, they make a great offering of 100 oxen to Zeus. And after these oxen were burned, the ashes were mixed with water from the Alpheus River and then thrown into a mound by the altar. Up to this day, there's these huge mounds built because of these sacrifices. Okay, so the person who's commissioned to build this, create this great statue, his name is Pheidias. And Pheidias, he got himself in trouble in Athens. He's the one who built or created or sculpted the image of Athena in the Parthenon. And they accused him of taking some of the gold. You know, they couldn't account for it all. And he embezzled. And so they, of course, the real reason he's friends with Salon, but we're not talking about that. So he got himself exiled. Well, where is he going to go? Hey, let's go to Olympia. So he ends up in Olympia, and he's asked to make the statue of Zeus. So the same person who made the statue of Athena on the Parthenon is the same one who made this great statue of Zeus at Olympia. And so he began his work in 432. It is considered one of the greatest statues ever made, one of the most beautiful statues ever made. I do have a description, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because we only have so much time. But I do have somebody who visited the site and wrote about it right after he was there. His name is Pausanias. And he says as follows. I'll just give you a little hint at the details. He says, the god sits on a throne, and he is made of gold and ivory. On his head lies a garland that is a copy of olive shoots. In his right hand, he carries a victory. This is like a female-like goddess, which, like the statue, is of ivory and gold. She wears a ribbon, and on her head a garland. In the left hand of the god is a scepter, ornamented with every kind of metal, and the bird sitting on the scepter is the eagle. The sandals also of the god are of fine gold, as is likewise his robe. On the robe are embroidered figures of animals and the flowers of the lily. The throne is adorned with gold, with jewels, to say nothing of ebony and ivory. Upon it are painted figures and wrought images. There are 4 victories represented as dancing women, one on each foot of the throne, and 2 others at the base of each foot. On each of the 2 front feet are the Theban children, ravished by sphinxes, while other sphinxes, Apollo and Artemis, are shooting down the children of Niobe. It goes on. I mean, we're talking, it goes on. In fact, it goes on. What I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of stuff going on there. Every aspect of mythology, let's just go ahead and throw that one in. And so there you have it. According to the Roman historian Livy, following his victory over Macedon, the Roman general Aemilius Paulus visited the statue of Zeus at Olympia and was moved in his soul as if he had seen the god in person. So amazing was this statue. Dio Chrysostom, who also visited it, declares in his Pheidias of Zeus at Olympia, O best and noblest of the artists, how charming and pleasing a spectacle you have wrought, and a vision of infinite delight for the benefit of all men, both Greek and barbarians, who have ever come here, as they have come in great throngs, and time after time no one will gainsay. For verily, even the irrational brute creation would be so struck with awe if they could catch merely a glimpse of yonder statue, not only the bulls which are being continually led to the altar, so that they would willingly submit themselves to the priest who performed the rites of sacrifice. If so, they would be giving some pleasure to the gods. But eagles too, and horses and lions, so that they would subdue their untamed and savage spirits and preserve perfect quiet. Okay, you know what this guy is basically saying? he's saying the statue is so beautiful that even the animals decide, hey, okay, I'm okay with being sacrificed. we're going to go with this. It's like, I don't think so. I don't think these animals are very cheerful about giving their lives over to Zeus. I don't think they care. Icarus' son, he's being a little bit romantic about the whole idea, and it's all very beautiful. Philo Byzantium also says, whereas we just wonder at the other 6 wonders, we kneel in front of this one in reverence, because the execution of the skills is as incredible as the image of Zeus is holy. The work brings praise, and immortality brings honor. Okay, but you know what? You always get the critic. You always, this statue's doing really well. It's getting like 4 stars, 5 stars, and you always have some nitwit giving it like half a star. So basically, there's a few of them. But one of them, of course, was Strabo. Strabo, he made a comment. He says, it seems that if Zeus were to stand up, he would unroof his temple. So basically, so all these people are marveling at this beautiful statue. And, I'm sorry, it's funny. Here we go. And so what happens is that Strabo goes, he's so tall in his throne. If he stood up, he would hit his head on the roof and go right through the roof. Okay, there's another guy who also said, Lucian of Samosata, he said, yeah, well, the statue is ivory and beautiful, but the wooden supports are full of rats. So like I said, you're going to have critics, but it tells you how famous it is. Well, what will happen is, as time goes on, is that everybody wants to have it. Oh, by the way, Phidias, you're thinking that, why did Phidias make the statue? It must be because he just loves Zeus so much. And he does say that he was very much wanted to honor the Zeus that he saw in the Iliad. But who he kind of really did it for? His boyfriend. It's like, what? Yeah, so in fact, he immortalized his lover, Pantarchus, by chiseling Pantarchus Kalos. So basically, Antipater, the beautiful, into the little finger of Zeus, according to Clement of Alexandria, and he immortalized his lover by making another representation of Pantarchus at the feet of Zeus in a relief of a boy crowning himself. He's going to really like this. So, once again, a very human connection to this beautiful marvel that moves people to the awe of Zeus, and he's thinking about somebody he loves, which is nice, but it kind of changes the perspective just a little bit. But it moves on. I do have Philo Byzantium talking about, but if Zeus is embarrassed to be called the son of Phidias, anyway, moving on. It gets worse. They notice this. The ancients didn't quickly catch this, and it became an inside joke. Okay, so a guy by the name of Caligula decided that, you know what? I'm going to take the statue, this Roman emperor, I'm going to take the statue of Zeus, and I'm going to bring it to Rome. And I'm going to cut off its head and put my head on top of it. So he was all ready to have at it. According to Suetonius, you already have the scaffolds around the great statue of Zeus, ready to remove it, and of course cut off its head. And fortunately, Gaius Caligula was killed. Just like that. And according to two sources, including Suetonius and Cassius Dio, at this very moment, the Zeus statue was seen to laugh. And the scaffold with his laugh fell off. So that ends that, all right? Okay, so you're thinking, okay, so what's going to happen? You're thinking, how important is the statue? Well, this is going to get really interesting quick. So the statue, it went through various situations. It suffered some damage. Lucius Samosata mentions a little bit of damage going on in the 2nd century. But what happens is that the Temple of Zeus at Olympia is closed by Theodosius I in the year 391. Okay, so he orders, them all closed down. Firmicus Maternus, he writes, "Most holy emperors, remove your temple treasures, cut them all down. May your money-making fire and the flame of your metalworkers roast these gods. Put all the temple gifts at your own disposal and control them for yourselves. Once the temples have been destroyed, you will be carried forward by virtue of the greater God." And so this is the kind of spirit that's going on. But what happens here is, yes, the Temple of Zeus is destroyed, but the statue, let's talk about what happened to the statue. Well, what happened to the statue is that it was moved. They moved the statue. So what happened is it was shipped off to Constantinople in the early 5th century. And so the eunuch and court favorite of the Eastern Roman emperors was determined to save much of the great artwork. And so his name is Lausus. And Lausus said, okay, so we're supposed to dethrone the gods. Nobody says we can't bring them here. And so he created in Constantinople a museum full of exquisite artwork that was located by the Hippodrome of Constantinople, which has the famous bronze tripod from the Oracle of Delphi. Yes, the Edict of Theodosius II in 408 declared to unseat them, but Lausus, he had other ideas. And so he built his museum by the stadium and by the baths Zeuxippus. And there it stood, along with the famed statue of Aphrodite from Cnidos, as fashioned by Procrates, as well as other famous treasures. Unfortunately, the Palace Museum of Lausus was destroyed, burned in 475 because of a fire. And so that is the end of the statue of Zeus. Or is it? Okay, you gotta hear this story. If you haven't heard this one, you're in for maybe too much of a treat. What happened is this: is that this is the time of icon making, and making images of course of God, of Jesus, of Mary, the saints. Well, there was this one icon painter who was living at that time, and he wanted to make an image of God, and I guess he just didn't have much inspiration. He just couldn't think of what God looks like. So you get this. So he goes to the image of Zeus, and he makes God Zeus. He paints it as Zeus. So if that's not enough, this is of course Gennadius, the archbishop, the patriarch of Constantinople from 458 to 471, heard about this. And of course the legend is that for doing such a terrible thing, the icon painter's hand got gnarled, cursed. So Gennadius, arrived to look at the situation, to look at his malady, and he healed him of his sacrilege. But then Gennadius, he took a look at this. He says, you know what? Kind of looks like God. Oh, no. It does look like God, And he said, well, Gennadius, maybe this, you saw behind Zeus, God. So, and this particular image of the bearded Zeus, his hair is ever so straight, parted directly in the middle, having a straight nose. Beard is like a fork. And this image then became popular with makers of coins as God. Now, this image is going out on the coins. You can take a look at coins from the period of time, from the 4 and the 500s, and you got these images of God. It's like, wait a second. Wait, he's holding the scepter. Wait, his beard. Oh, no. And it became the famous Christ Pantocrator image, which, by the way, in Byzantine art, is still the image today. So we have comments on this. Even John of Damascus talks about the fact that in the painting, he divided the hair into parts so that his face should not be hidden, for this was the way the Greeks painted Zeus, unquote. Oh, no, we got ancient confirmation on that, even into the 700s. So when you see images of God or Jesus Pantocrator, congratulations, you are now seeing the image of Zeus from Olympia. That's your big epiphany for today. I'm sorry, you just can't make this stuff up. I just think it's too funny. Okay. I know we're running out of time. And we're at the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. Well, I think we're doing pretty good. What do you think, huh? Okay. Under the Persian Empire, of course, you have, obviously, the Greek colonies were suffering. The Persians are taking over. I got to tell you, I'm going to be very unpopular. The Persian rule wasn't too bad. Sorry, it was bad for some people, but the Carians did pretty well. Let's talk about ancient Caria. I think the Carians are so interesting because it's an egalitarian society that was able to survive, even as late as that period of time. We had as many male as female leaders in the southern part, probably a legacy left over from even before maybe the Bronze Age. Anyway, so Mausolus, yeah, that's a guy's name. Mausolus was a petty client king of course, the Persian king, the king of kings, lord of lords. And that's, by the way, the name Mausolus is where we get the word mausoleum from, right? And Mausolus, he was in love with, of course, his beautiful wife, Artemisia, who is also his sister. So it's kind of like, she's like queen sister wife. Okay, anyway, so what happens is that he was, he fought oftentimes against Rhodes, and he eventually dies, and his wife takes over, sister wife takes over, Artemisia, from 353 to 351, after which point she dies, and she was able to take over Rhodes, by the way. In fact, she made a huge monument dedicated to that fact, which the Rhodians later on, after her death, tried to cover up because it's pretty embarrassing how she beat them. But about this story, she wanted to create a great monument to her husband. She was, by the way, so in love that she mixed his ash with her wine and drank it every day. You just can't make this stuff up. I don't know how much was left of him to put into the mausoleum, but ask that question if that legend's true. So she builds this gigantic mausoleum. Well, then of course she dies. Well, in the 1st century CE, Pliny the Elder notes that you had artwork done on each side. He says the circumference is in all 440 feet, and the breadth from north to south 63, the two fronts being not so wide in extent. It is 25 cubits in height and is surrounded by 63 columns. the outer circumference being known as the pteron, which means the wing. The entire east side of the mausoleum was sculpted by Scopas, the north side by Brexus, the south by Timotheus, and the west by Licarius. And so basically these four artists are trying to rival each other because they all want to have the best side. You're going to look at my side. And so, hey, you know what? Competition is sometimes good because it made the sculptures absolutely amazing. Amazing. It is a combination of three architectural types. Basically, it has Greek as well as Egyptian, as well as Lycian influences. So there you have it. So the lowest part resembles a Lycian tomb. The middle part resembles a Greek temple, and the top is a pyramid. Isn't that neat? And all four sides, wow, I may change that pretty quick. Four sides covered with this amazing artwork. It stood for a period of time. In fact, it was so popular that people started to mimic it. And some of those mimicked mausoleums are still standing to this day. And I visited a few of them throughout Caria and moving into other parts of Asia Minor. It stood for a long time. In fact, here's the sad news. It stood all the way until the 13th century. It almost made it to us too, the 13th century. An earthquake then toppled its upper story. That's important. Story. It's an important story. Because what happens is that when it's fully destroyed later on, because the upper story fell into the back of the hill and that hill covered it, we actually have remains of the upper portion of the mausoleum, but we don't have the lower portion. Isn't that fascinating? Because it fell backwards. And so there you have it. Okay, so it still stood for a while. And then around 1505 to 1507, you're going to have, it's going to start to be taken apart a little bit more. The remnants of the mausoleum, however, and I actually want to read the story because it's worth reading. I know it's long, but I really do want to read it to you because I'm going to read it slowly, and it is worth your time. I'm looking at my time. So I'm going to tell you what happened to the mausoleum. And I'm going to go ahead and read the account of it as somebody who was there. How's that? You guys ready? Okay, so of course, the Knights of St. John were there, and it was destroyed in the year 1522. We're going to learn a lot about humanity in the 1500s right now. And this account was written by Linnaeus Claude Guhart, who worked at St. Peter's Castle, and he writes as follows. It says this. In the year 1522, when Sultan Suleiman was preparing to attack Rhodes, the Grand Master, knowing the importance of the castle of St. Peter, and being aware the Turks would seize it easily at the first assault, sent some of the knights to repair the fortress and make all due preparations to resist the enemy. Among the number of those sent was the Commander Tourette Lones, who was afterwards present at the taking of Rhodes and came to France, where we related what I am now about to narrate, right? When the knights had arrived at Nisi, Bodrum, they at once commenced to fortify the castle. And looking about for stones wherewith to make lime, found no more suitable or more easily got at than some steps of white marble raised in the front of a terrace in the middle of a level field near the port, which had been formerly a great square of Halicarnassus. They therefore pulled down and took away the marble steps, and finding the stone good, proceeded, and having destroyed the little masonry remained above the ground, to dig lower, in hopes of finding more. In this they had great success, for in a short time they saw the deeper they went, the more the structure was enlarged, supplying them not only with stone for making lime, but also for building. After 4 or 5 days, hope you're still listening, having laid bare a great space one afternoon, they saw an opening into the cellar. Taking a candle, they let themselves down through this opening and found that it led into a fine square apartment, ornamented all around with columns of marble, with their bases, capitals, architraves, frieze, and cornices engraved and sculpted in half relief. The space between the columns was lined with slabs and bands of marble of different colors, ornamented with moldings and sculptures in harmony with the rest of the work, and inserted in the white ground of the wall where the battle scenes were represented in sculpted relief. You're thinking, this is beautiful. I mean, can you imagine seeing such a sight? Now wait. Having at first admired these works and entertained their fancy with the singularity of the sculpture, they pulled it to pieces and broke up the whole of it, applying it to the same purpose as the rest. Isn't that disappointing? I mean, you're just like, something is awe-inspiring, marvelous, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. Let's destroy it. Break it down and use it. I tell you, those people in the 1500s, obviously, we've improved since then, right? Beyond this apartment, they found a very low doorway, which led into another apartment, serving as an antechamber, where was a sepulchre was decorated with column tops and padding of white. And they keep discovering all these beautiful things. They even found fragments of cloth of gold and spangles of the same metal. Absolutely beautiful. And of course, they destroyed the whole thing. There is nothing left of the Halicarnassus except for pieces that are reused in St. Peter's Castle, and drumroll please, a happy accident where part of the top layer fell back into the hill behind. Archaeologists found that, and as a result, we can reconstruct the top levels. Isn't that great? I love Halicarnassus. I've been there 3 times, but it's definitely well worth the visit. Especially if you have a good guy that knows how to try to figure out this gigantic hole in the ground and tell you what it really is there. He's like, can you imagine, how wonderful this is? As I'm weeping. Okay, we're at looks like we're at the Colossus of Rhodes, and we'll see how much time we have. Okay, we got 2 more. We can do this. The Colossus of Rhodes. Well, the Colossus of Rhodes, long story, really short, is that during the Hellenistic age, you had after Alexander the Great, you had these various generals that are fighting about, and there's a certain Antigonus, the one-eyed, and he has a siege against Rhodes, and Ptolemy the First of Egypt wanted the same site. Nobody likes Antigonus the First, the one-eyed, anyway. And Ptolemy was able to help the Rhodians through a relief ship so they can hold against the siege of Antigonus the First in 304. And as a result, Antigonus abandoned his plans. So he left, leaving his siege equipment worth 300 talents, thanking Helios, their patron god, for this victory. They decided to use these 300 talents to erect a great image dedicated to their savior solar deity. And so the Rhodians created this gigantic work. They outsourced a certain Chares, who received the honor. Chares didn't know what he's getting into. It's another sad story. So basically what happened here is the Chares said that, okay, we want to, what would you charge for a statue 50 feet high? And Chares gave the amount. And then they asked him, what would you charge for a statue twice that height? And he says, oh, I guess I charged twice that amount. Wait a minute. When it comes to engineering, making something that high as a statue was so daunting, he wasn't thinking straight. Because it will require eightfold the amount of labor. Because of that, but a bargain was a bargain. So he set about trying to make the statue, and then then they ran out of money. But since he had by his honor promised to make it under budget, he used his own money, and then he committed suicide. So poor guy, didn't work out for him. This great statue stood for a long time, dedicated to the sun. Well, actually, not really a long time at all. What happened is that while it was built, it took from 292 to 280 BCE to build. It was 60 feet, 18 meters in diameter, and its legs did not span the harbor like we thought. It was just off to one side, right next to that castle, where there are remnants of some of the statue supports that are still there, which they recently discovered. But it was destroyed in 226. So it only stood from 280 to 226, about 60 years. But the ruins were so cool that people loved to visit them anyway, because they're still monolithic, and it was still a tourist attraction. So good news there. What happened to it? Well, what happened is it was in ruin, stood there to the 7th century, and during the Caliphate of Uthman, between 644 to 656, the entire work was sold to a Jewish merchant who shipped it all off. And he got a good price for it too. So that ends that, that great wonder. And we're finally at the lighthouse. We made it. Whew. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is a lighthouse. So here we go. I will just mention the fact that the lighthouse was approximately 350 feet high. This tower was the second tallest man-made structure and in antiquity. Of course, obviously, the Pyramid of Giza was the first one. It was pretty amazing to behold. The Pharos Lighthouse was constructed on a holy island that was mentioned, by the way, in the Iliad. It had strategic importance. The problem is that so many ships would crash along that shore. It was very dangerous, and so a lighthouse was definitely needed. The story goes is that Ptolemy II had Sosistratus make this great lighthouse, but he forbade him to put his name upon him. Sosistratus figured out what to do. What he did is he carved his name on it, covered over plaster, and then put the king's name on top. And he knew that the plaster would eventually crumble and his name would be revealed, which it did. And it declared a special dedication. Sosistratus of Canidos, son of Dexphanus, to the savior gods, protecting those upon the sea. So he got credit in the end. It is the lighthouse. Its light was seen accordingly between sometimes 30 to up to 100 miles away. It used a reflective bronze, since wood, they didn't want to use all this wood, so that's how they magnified the light. I know I'm going pretty fast through this, but I want to talk about one section here, that the lighthouse was a tourist attraction. And so basically, if you're a visitor, I want you to just kind of pretend, if you will, you're visiting the Pharos Lighthouse. You walk up a 600-foot ramp. You arrive at the doorway. This entrance was located above an elaborate base structure, having many chambers. As revealed through coinage minted at the time, the door was consistently lower on the structure up until the reign of Antonius Pius, when it was raised higher. So there's some structural changes. As you enter the tower, you would see the dedication of Ptolemy II, and then later, of course, Sosopatris. Inside the lowest section of the building, tourists could walk up a spiral ramp to an observation deck that was about 200 feet up the rectangular section of the tower. Here, you're thinking, this is wonderful. So you're already kind of looking out of the balcony. So what do they describe as being here? This was the place to purchase gifts and snacks. What? Yes. They actually had, at this time, a tourist shop. It gets better. We have some of the souvenirs, including coins minted with the image of the Pharaoh's lighthouse on it. You have little miniatures that you could collect of the Lighthouse of Alexandria that they have discovered as far away as Scythia and the Crimea. Yes. Hey, I got to visit. You had other images as well. The four corners of this balcony were adorned with statues of Triton blowing a conch shell. Then, of course, you move up from this and to the next level. And this, of course, the stairs within the 8-sided tower now led to a higher, smaller balcony where the best view of the city was possible. We have an image of this from a coin that was discovered in Afghanistan. And above this 8-sided section of the structure was a circular section containing the lighthouse flame and the mirror itself. So basically you have a square base, an octagonal, that's not even a word, that's late, center section, and a circular top section. And you see this imitated all over the ancient world. This becomes the model for lighthouses everywhere. You're going to even see this model in Rome, not Rome, off the coast of Italy. You're going to see images of this. If you walk down in Ephesus, there was a little miniature of that along the main marble road that stood there. This was a popular image. Okay, how long does it survive? Well, it loses its upper level in 796. And then between 750 to 800 BCE, there's a story that Epiphanius the monk, he basically, well, I don't want to tell that story. Yeah, I'll tell another story. We have the story of Sultan Ibn Tulum. Of course, the story is that he was told by the Romans, the Byzantines, he was told that there was a treasure somewhere in the lighthouse because they wanted to destroy his lighthouse. They figured just appeal to his greed. So he destroyed the top level and he realized, hey, there's no gold here. So instead he built a mosque on top. And that mosque is reflected in various images, including in St. Marcus in Venice. You'll see the image of the mosque on top. Isn't that fascinating? The lighthouse continued to stand, and in fact, it was restored to its former glory in 1272. But what will happen is eventually on August 8th, 1303, 1300s are not very good for these monuments. The entire lighthouse shook and fell. And part of it fell into the sea. And to this day, you could see, if you go underwater, which you're probably not going to do, you could see the outline of where it fell, which is fun. And they're trying to make some kind of underwater park in that area. So that will be cool. They found an image of Poseidon there. And then, of course, the rest were looted and used for the nearby fortress. And that ends the great Pharaoh's lighthouse. So what are we leaving with here? Because obviously we're finishing up right now. We're leaving with, of course, that these 7 things you must see truly are, from our perspective, wonders. Seriously, you look at the pyramids and you can't help but feel awe for them. The Pharaoh's lighthouse, with its brilliant beacon, was able to bring in ships to safe harbor. And the light was seen for up to 100 miles away. This statue of Zeus literally moved people to tears. It even got to the heart of an icon painter who was needing inspiration. You know, and you think about this, the mausoleum became beautiful because of competition. And I mean, so really, these are masterpieces that are definitely worth remembering, and it shows the creativity and the tenacity that we have by our human nature. The pyramids do appeal to ego. The mausoleum does appeal to competition. The Pharaoh's Lighthouse does appeal to utilitarian grandeur that was much needed. The Statue of Zeus does appeal to aesthetics. The Temple of Artemis does appeal to a sense of loftiness of this place in the clouds. And of course, you have the sheer balance between nature, right? Nature and humanity, the balance between in the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And I think that together they are an amazing accomplishment. I know I did forget one, but I don't know. I don't have much to say about the Colossus of Rhodes because it only lasted for 60 years. But maybe that is a representation of hubris as well as the fact that we don't always succeed at what we try to accomplish. Still, people appreciate it anyway. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the talk. And I'll get one more picture of everybody before we all go. If you want to turn on because we have some more people joining us. And then I will open up for questions. Ready, set, and let's see if people. Okay, we got more people. Okay, cool. A few seconds here. Oh, yay. All right, you guys survived. These are the veterans that survived. There we go. Okay. Whew, we finished the talk. We made it. Okay, any questions? As I realize I haven't had any of my drink except for like how many sips. No wonder I'm coughing. Well, that's gone. Questions? I think I'm coughing because of all the smoke, all this fire.
Yeah,
really
I'm doing that too.
I've been coughing. And for those who don't know or from other places, we've been having a lot of fires here. So it's been pretty brutal. And it's made the air really congested. The sky looks apocalyptic, orange and yellow. And some people here had their homes threatened by these fires. So it's kind of a scary time. But
ash falling like snow out of the sky.
Yeah, it's raining ash outside. And my eyes are watery. It's so bad. I have to keep squirting my eyes with water. Relief. So, yeah, I know. This 2020 just keeps getting better. Okay. So, any questions? Sorry. Did I answer them all? No. Yeah, I think we covered them, right?
Okay. Yeah, nothing's going on in the chat, and
I think I sufficiently answered every question.
It must be.
All right. Whew. Yeah. Well, yeah. That was a fun talk to put together. A lot of work, by the way.
Well, it was an excellent talk.
Yeah, there's so many sources on this, and most books don't talk about all that what you just heard. So, I think a lot of books will tell you there's only 2 sources. Mentioning that, and I found 5, so it tells you they're not doing their homework very well. Okay, I do have one question, and it'll be really quick. Of the 7 wonders of the world, except for the pyramids, which one would you like to go back in time to see, and why? That's a good question. Of the 7 wonders, and anybody can answer. So of the 6, I should say, because the pyramids are out. They're all saying, "I want to see the pyramids." Now, which one would you like to see, and why?
Maybe the
Huh?
Temple of Artemis.
So, yeah, that's where I want to go. Okay, so Temple of Artemis.
Yeah, I like following the history of turning the goddess into the Virgin Mary, and I find that fascinating. So I would love to see that.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I say Temple of Artemis too. So I'm there. Who else? Which others? Anybody want to speak up?
Colossus of Rhodes.
The Colossus of Rhodes. You know, it's funny. Pliny the Elder mentions this too. People loved climbing the ruins. They would go inside. They're like hollowed tunnels. This monolithic monstrosity that collapsed, and it was fun. People actually built dwellings inside of parts of them. So it would be fun to run through a tunnel, an arm or a leg. So yeah, I could see that would be fun. And you know, it's the unloved monument. You know, somebody's got to love it, you know. And testimony to somebody who thought he could do anything. Yeah, I could double the size. Yeah. Okay, good. Anybody else you can just quickly say.
Harry and Laurel both vote for the Temple of Artemis as well.
Temple of Artemis. Looks like I'm taking people on a tour. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Anyone that's not the Temple of Artemis or...
I'd want to see Zeus.
You want to see the Statue of Zeus?
Statue of Zeus, absolutely.
Yeah. Kind of have to say, I'm really curious how beautiful that statue was to move so many people.
Yeah, based on the description, like it just sounds like it would be beyond breathtaking.
Well, people were like in tears when they saw it. Well, and of course the whole thing where animals are willing to give themselves up.
Exactly.
Yes. Anybody else?
Well, I would like to also, well, I've been to Olympia, so I'm always fascinated with the Olympic Games and everything. So that's just a part of the whole complex of that was pinnacle to the unification, or at least the common culture of Greece. And so the beauty of the statue, but it also wasn't really touched on, was just how central that is in bringing the unified identity of Greece, and, through the Olympic Games, through Zeus as a common deity. All told, be a continuation of what I've already seen there, but to see it in its glory, and the stadiums in their original place instead of the partial overgrown type stuff that I saw. So yeah, I'd love to see that.
I mean, it had to be a beautiful showpiece for people to go there every 4 years and to bring all these people together. Yeah. I mean, and for that to be translated into the image of God, this is the concept. You just can't make this up. So I guess Zeus goes on. But yeah, and they found Vedius's workshop too. So I'm sure they mentioned that on the tour. They found portions of that and where he worked away. And yeah, okay. So anybody for any other one? So we got. It looks like we got 2 statues of Zeus. We got 3 temples of Artemis. We can add the word Artemis if you want.
Stephanie votes for the gardens.
Huh?
Stephanie votes for either the statue of Zeus or the gardens.
Yeah, the gardens. Can you imagine, how tall, because I gave you the dimensions, how tall they were, like a theater, just row after row after row after row. And then, of course, the gigantic galleries underneath. And they mentioned, I didn't mention this, but they mentioned that they had on the underside vegetation that did not need to have sunlight growing there. And kind of cool, So you had different kinds of space and utilization of it, and so it's more than just something just beautiful. It's just, I think it's utilitarian because they did grow orchards
There's some engineering stuff that's, as I understand it, was pretty fascinating. A lot of speculation because I've seen some programs that were searching for it and maybe found it, maybe not. But the hydraulics of the whole operation, the engineering of it, the architectural aspects of it.
Yeah, the Archimedes had the screw that brought the water up. They would try to figure out from the river. They said they had to bring that water up somehow, all the way up those tiers. Yeah, those are good. I love those shows. Yeah. All right. Okay. Any last requests? Because I'm going to take you there right now. Okay, we're there. All right. Thank you so much again for coming. I hope that was fun. We'll exercise and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
That was